This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on AFR Talk.
Hi, and welcome back to this Monday edition of Focal Point on AFR Talk. Brian Fisher is my name. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio. Honored to welcome to our decision maker line Pastor Scott Lively. He is the president of Abiding Truth Ministries. He is the author of the book The Pink Swastika, which details in heavily documented fashion the connection of homosexual agenda, the homosexual movement, with the rise of Nazism. And he has also been in the news lately because of a couple of reasons. One, he's been charged with crimes against humanity for doing nothing more than teaching in a foreign country biblical principles of human sexuality. And he's also been in the news because of Russia's newly signed law, it's about a year old or so, less than that, that prohibits homosexual propaganda going to teenagers, and that's going to be an issue when the Olympics roll around the Winter Olympics next winter. Scott, welcome back to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Hey, Brian, good to be with you.
Well, thank you for taking time to chat with us. A couple of things I want to get to, have you respond to. Number one, NBC. Let's start with the crimes against humanity. Give us an update on what's going. People may have not heard our first conversation with your lawyer. It's almost impossible for me to believe. But it shows you where we're at as a culture, that you can be charged with a crime against humanity and have a judge said, yeah, this case ought to go ahead for doing nothing more than preaching a biblical view of sexuality. Talk to us about that.
Well, Brian, just 15 minutes ago, I received an email saying that the judge had denied our motion to allow us to appeal his ruling denying our motion to dismiss. And the ruling was outrageous. Mine is the only case that hasn't been dismissed since the Supreme Court struck down the alien tort statute in the Kiobel case last month. It's the only case, and this judge has now refused to allow my attorneys to appeal his decision to the higher courts. It's absolutely outrageous.
This alien
political case.
Yeah. Now this alien tort statute you're talking about, it's designed to prevent an American citizen from being prosecuted in an American court for something that he does in another jurisdiction in a foreign country. Am I right?
It was originally a statute adopted by Congress in the late 1700s. To deal with piracy, so that people in foreign countries would have recourse to American actions outside our borders. So that was what it was originally for. The past 30 years or so, the far left attorneys have used it to go after multinational corporations who happen to have an office in the United States. And so it's been used for political purposes. And then this Center for Constitutional Rights, and misnamed, used it to go after me and file this lawsuit charging me. It's a civil case, so they're claiming that my preaching against homosexuality in Uganda it violated international law and led to a campaign of persecution that rises to the level of crimes against humanity. It's just simply ridiculous.
Well, this is just bizarre to me because what you did in Uganda is a protected activity in the United States for an American citizen. First Amendment protects your right to the free exercise of religion. It protects your right to freedom of speech, your right to publish, your right to peaceably assemble, all those rights now. And so you're being prosecuted for something that you did that is perfectly legal for an American citizen to do.
Right, and it's perfectly legal and welcomed in Uganda as well. Not even
a crime in Uganda.
That's right. I mean, it was the nation of Uganda loves me, this is all being driven by this Marxist law firm called the Center for Constitutional Rights at 666 Broadway in New York.
Wow.
And that they're going after me. They're driving this. The homosexuals in Uganda, the sexual minorities in Uganda, are smug. They're just pawns in this. This is the far left in this country trying to leverage this case. They've got one of the most liberal judges in the United States, and they're trying to leverage this into to impact the global culture war, and drop the bar on what constitutes crimes against humanity to encompass all disapproval of homosexuality around the world. It's just really it's an amazing play that they're making, and they're unfortunately it's successful so far.
Well, it just seems particularly sinister, Scott, talking here with Scott Lively, Abiding Truth Ministries, who now has to defend himself in court, apparently, against charges he's committed a crime against humanity for teaching a biblical view of sexuality. It seems particularly sinister to me that you've got a federal judge that would consider public preaching about homosexuality anywhere in the world to be a crime against humanity, but he obviously believes that there's some validity to that charge, or he would have tossed the case out.
Well, he equated me to Joseph Goebbels in the original court hearing back in January, and then in his ruling denying the motion to dismiss, he compared my actions here in the U.S. to preparing a bomb and shipping it to another country, hoping it explodes there. So that's the kind of verbiage he's using related to this case. It's really unnerving to see that level of bias.
Now I want to shift gears and talk about what's going on in Russia just for a second. But before we do that, Scott, last thing on the Uganda case, the people that are pushing this prosecution in civil court, but still it's a trial and you still have to, show up and got to defend yourself, is that you've been blamed by homosexual activists in Uganda for the murder of a very prominent Ugandan homosexual activist. Tell us the truth behind what happened to him.
Well, David Cato actually was murdered by a gay prostitute that he bailed out of jail to be his live-in lover and houseboy. And when he failed to pay this man as promised, the guy bashed his brains in with a hammer. He was arrested, confessed to the crime, and serving 30 years in a Ugandan prison. All of those facts were left out of the case when they filed it with the judge.
So they want to pin his murder on you. That you went over there, you stirred up so much homophobia that somebody bashed in his brains with a hammer, and it turns out it was the one who did it was a homosexual prostitute. It was over a sex deal gone bad.
That's right. People need to understand that the narrative that underlies the entire gay agenda, all their propaganda, all their policy initiatives, is the idea that all disapproval of homosexuality leads inevitably to hatred, violence, and murder of homosexuals. And that this case gives them an opportunity to prove the narrative because they're talking about things that happen in a mysterious foreign country that the Westerners don't know about, don't understand, and they're able to twist the facts to make it seem like this narrative actually is being proven. But it's like the Matthew Shepard case, right? The truth came out about Matthew Shepard last week, and he wasn't the hate crime victim that they had been portraying as the last 10 or however many years. He was a sex partner with the guys that killed him. And once again, gay on gay crimes, just like in Uganda. But the left and these gay activists are spinning all these stories to get the maximum possible advantage out of them to advance their narrative, which is a paranoid delusion. It's not real.
Let's talk about Russia just for a second. Russia's got a new law, fairly recent law, that prohibits the propagandizing of teens toward homosexuality. They want to keep teens from being sucked in the homosexual lifestyle. And homosexuality, the homosexual conduct is legal in Russia. So this is just a law against propagandizing teens, just like we don't want them propagandized in America into taking up smoking. They, and I think correctly, don't want teens propagandized into homosexuality. Now, NBC talked a little bit about the situation in Russia, your connection. Did you have something to do with the shaping of that law, which I think is a very, very good law? Did you have something to do with that? And what do you think will happen when the Olympics come to Russia next winter?
Well, I believe I did have something to do with that. I mean, not directly. I wasn't working with the government officials crafting it. But in my 50-city tour of the former Soviet Union in 2006 and 2007, that's what I was advocating for. That was what I was suggesting they ought to do. And I included that in my letter to the Russian people that I published in the very last city of the tour, which is St. Petersburg. And, of course, St. Petersburg turns out to be the first city that adopted this law. So, and then several others did. Then the national government adopted it. They passed it unanimously in the National Congress, and then Putin signed it. So, I indirectly assisted in that, and it's one of the proudest achievements of my career.
Let me ask you this, Scott. This is a little bit delicate, so but I've been one of the few people in the pro-family movement in the United States that's spoken out in support of that law. I've praised that law. I've said it's a good law. But there's been this, to me, and maybe I'm not aware of what's out there, but it seems to me there's been this kind of silence in large measure from the pro-family community to support that law. I mean, am I right about that? And if that's so, why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think, Brian, you're one of the few people in the country that has seen the end of this culture war and what it really comes down to. This is a winner-take-all conflict between Christians and homosexuals, and only one worldview is going to be able to prevail in the end. That you cannot at the same time have a society that says all sex belongs inside of marriage, while you have a cultural standard that says anything goes regarding sexuality. You can't have them both. It's A cannot equal not A. And so one worldview is going to prevail, the other has to fail. And we have been failing. The Christian worldview has been being defeated for 60 or 70 years now, and it's only in places like Russia that did not have the sexual revolution when we did, that still has the backbone and the perspective about what's normal and natural to be able to stand up to this agenda.
Well, it's kind of an amazing thing to me, Scott, that Russia is now setting the pace for the United States in terms of public morality. Whoever thought that day would come?
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Our guest has been Scott Lively, who is the president of Abiding Truth Ministry, shockingly having to stand trial for being accused of a crime against humanity, simply for teaching a biblical view of sexuality, which is a reminder of what Scott said there toward the end of our conversation. It's a zero-sum game. Every advance of the homosexual agenda comes at the expense of religious liberty, which is why Scott has to stand trial in federal court. Scott, God bless you, my friend. We'll be praying for you as this trial proceeds.
Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Lively, Abiding Truth Ministries. Back in 2. Stay with us.